just a year ago, we had a $100 billion surplus here in California, so things have certainly changed very quickly. The governor saying at the local level, something to blame were the devastating winter storms that pushed back the tax deadline for a number of people who live in that hardest hit area. Now they don't have to file till October, so it really makes it challenging when you're trying to approve a budget by next month. The mayor, Darrell Steinberg, just delivered those public remarks at the podium here at City Hall, officially saying he is not seeking a third term for Sacramento mayor. I got to talk with him one-on-one shortly after for a few minutes, and I asked him, why now? Was this decision long in the making? Did you wake up one day and decide not to run again? And he said it was a gradual decision. He felt now is the time personally, and he wants to hand off the job to someone else. What he's most proud of, he says a couple things: the economic development that he saw in our area. The governor says he is frustrated over the growing homeless crisis affecting the state, and he's blaming local leaders for not doing enough to tackle the problem, to bring people inside and bring people into permanent housing. He says current plans show that homelessness will only be reduced by 2% over the next 4 years, and he says that trend is just unacceptable. And Congressman, the situation in Afghanistan is quickly evolving. Just last week, President Biden said there would be no immediate evacuation of the embassy in Kabul, but fast forwards today, our embassy is evacuated and the country's own president has fled his homeland. Moments ago, we found out that Bill Lee, the man standing beside me, won the Republican nomination for Tennessee governor. Wow, what a night.
Wow is right. What a great night. What an exciting night.
And you mentioned a couple things you want to do as governor. What tops your list?
You know, people want a good job and a good school for their kid in a safe neighborhood.
We are on the tarmac of Mather Airport here in Sacramento County, where President Joe Biden arrived just after 2 this afternoon. You can see Air Force One behind me here. Governor Gavin Newsom wants to cut the red tape that slows down construction on new projects while also protecting the environment. And this new infrastructure package aims to do just that. It is an addition to the budget that was stacked on late in the process. It was a busier than expected day here in Sacramento County. About 30,000 people stood in line to cast their ballot this election day, bringing the total to around 50,000 in-person voters if you factor in the early vote, which far surpasses the turnout that we saw back in 2018 during the midterm election. California Attorney General Rob Bonta calling on social media companies like Facebook and Twitter to stop the spread of disinformation. So in the context of elections, that's wrong information with the intent to cause chaos and get certain people elected. There is no question that Brian Dahle is well aware that he has an uphill battle as he takes on Governor Gavin Newsom in this race. And Brian Dahle, he tried to make the case to listeners on this radio program during the only debate of this race. He tried to say that Governor Newsom is disconnected, out of touch with the everyday Californian who is struggling to keep up with rising inflation. This as the Supreme Court gets ready to decide whether women will face restrictions in getting the abortion pill called mifepristone as this Texas case plays out in the federal court system. This is the drug that's the primary method of terminating a pregnancy in the United States. It's used in more than half of U.S. abortion cases. The change that state lawmakers would like to see is an end to price gouging within the oil industry that some say was to blame over the summer when Californians were paying $2.60 more for gasoline than the national average. Some places they were paying up to $8. The March for Democracy just kicked off. Not sure if you can see them in the distance. They're going to be heading our way, so I want to stay on this shot here. But if you can see in the distance, we have Governor Gavin Newsom heading up Capitol Mall toward the Capitol, and he wanted this march to happen right before his second inauguration because he says this day is a symbolic one. It's 2 years after the January 6th insurrection on the Capitol. So we're just wrapping up a press conference. You just heard from Placer County Sheriff there, who is recapping what happened when they apprehended a 35-year-old Eric Abril. More than 60 tips, they said, came in between now and yesterday. 33 hours in total, this manhunt was underway. And they said among those tips, it all led back to the same area in Rockland. We're talking about a Rainier Court. Well, I just got to the scene, Bria, moments ago, just talked with an officer here. And Sacramento police, they're investigating yet another deadly shooting in the Del Paso Heights community. You can see the crime scene tape behind me here. Let's take a peek at this scene. Blocking traffic near the Capitol. It even fell on a car over there on the road. Thankfully, no no one inside, but I do want to show you the root of this tree. Conditions extremely saturated after several days of rainfall, and it doesn't take much for these trees to topple over. Take a look at this. I would say probably about a foot so far. Rob's the expert. I'd say about a foot. But very, very powdery, enough to build a snowman in, not fun to drive in. Take a look at all these trucks standing by. There are chain controls in effect. Well, this is not something ideal for wildfire season, so they want to cut this down. Well, we are 6 weeks behind in terms of fuel moistures this time of year, so that's great for the mountainous areas that might see a delayed wildfire season. But places like here, the Sacramento Valley, we could see many more grass fires than we have in years past. So that's something that crews are preparing for as we inch closer to that time. This is all spilling from the river into neighborhoods. It even goes into the second lane, which is why this road is closed this morning. This is a charred door you're looking at. We have some charred fiberglass and part of a roof and plenty of debris left behind. And fire crews tell me the entire roof collapsed. And we are ending the week in what is the worst week since 2008. As you can remember, that was our last recession. There is a lot of fears right now of another looming recession on the horizon.
And ABC 10's Bridgette Bjorlo is taking a look at what's being done to maintain safety. So, Bridgette, there are challenges that come with this, right?
Certainly, Bria, a number of challenges. First responders say growing encampments are straining resources and putting the public at greater risk. But bringing people off the street is no easy task.
Out of a home and into homelessness is a reality Joe Smith knows firsthand.
Well, life happens, lost the job, bills got to be too much, couldn't pay rent anymore, and, out on the street was the only option.
And on the Sacramento streets is where he went for 6 years until help for his alcohol addiction arrived in 2011.
It's possible. It's beautiful on the other side, but it's really a struggle.
Homelessness in Sacramento County has jumped nearly 400% since that time. Growing encampments near neighborhoods becoming an all too familiar sight, and first responders say an increasingly dangerous one.
Starting a fire in the middle of a field or next to a building creates a very significant hazard.
People will do anything to stay warm and sheltered.
It's terrible. People are freezing out there. They're screaming like wolves.
Some living outside forego the county's respite centers and stay warm this way.
Just this last year, we've had 2,500 fire-related incidents related to homeless encampments. Those fires have, at times, spread into buildings, spread into vehicles, spread into property. It's getting worse.
So the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office is stepping up its outreach efforts to move whoever wants the help into a shelter or other facility.
Most of the individuals we're contacting want no part of the help. They want to live a lot of this nomadic lifestyle that don't have any rules, that don't have any limitations.
Homeless advocates prefer behavioral health workers taking the lead on helping the unhoused, as laid out in the city and county's dual plan to fight the crisis, motivating people through real-life examples that transformation is possible.
I think a lot of reason why people don't accept help is because they don't trust it. They don't believe it's actually going to help. So some folks need to see the results of the people around them getting the help they need and the successes that come from that.
Sacramento continues to be challenged with not enough shelter space. The county only has 2,300 beds, nowhere near enough to cover the estimated 9,300 homeless people living in Sacramento County. The state is bringing over around 300 tiny homes to Sacramento to try to help with this effort. Those should be built at Cal Expo by this fall. Bria, Walt.
Wow, it's a big, major problem that many places, especially here, that is dealing with, and they're working on solutions, but we will just have to see what the result is.
Bridgette, that was a really good story that really broke it down. You had Joe Smith, who just fell through the cracks of renting. He really wants a place like a tiny home. And then Sergeant Gandhi saying maybe, 2/3 of the people don't want to be in a restricted area where they can get help.
Exactly.
So, the solution is...
We're still working on it,
there
right?
one, for the masses. Bridgette, I know you stay on that story, and thank you for doing that.
The Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is trying to raise money for his presidential campaign at a time when he's trailing in the Republican primary against former President Trump by more than 30 percentage points. But his visit also comes as he's publicly feuding with our governor, Gavin Newsom. And a lot of experts feel that DeSantis is going to use his trip here to Sacramento as a means to score political points. Florida Governor presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis touching down in the Golden State Monday as he tries to boost Republican support for his campaign. It marks his first visit to California since he admitted to sending dozens of migrants from the southern border to Sacramento, and as California's Attorney General investigates whether the move was legal.
He likes to publicly go after our governor and after the progress that our state is always making. And so I think it gives him, a further platform for that kind of message and that kind of narrative that he wants to put himself into.
The backdrop for DeSantis' visit, Del Paso Country Club in the Art and Arcade area of California's capital city, where ticket prices for the roundtable breakfast start at $3,300 apiece. The private event, hosted by Republican donor and real estate developer Stephen Egger. Local Republicans welcoming DeSantis to town while extending the invite to other GOP challengers.
We look forward to seeing all of the Republican candidates come out to California to get to know our voters and make their case. And whoever becomes the nominee.
Recent polling shows 1 out of 5 Republicans support DeSantis in a presidential primary, compared to more than half of Republicans backing former President Trump. And the DeSantis campaign just sent out an email moments ago to potential donors. And in that, he compares and contrasts California with Florida. He says California is in rapid decline right now, citing the homeless crisis, people leaving crime-ridden cities at a very fast rate of speed. And then he compares that with his home state of Florida as being the fastest growing state, Monica, in the country. California is home to over 200,000 DACA recipients. That's more than a quarter of the national average. Dreamers we spoke with today say they've spent their entire lives in this country and now their future is uncertain. Fatima Diaz has no memory of her life in Mexico. She moved to the U.S. with her family at just 11 months old.
I've spent a good portion of my life not knowing that I was undocumented. So when I found out, it was like kind of hard for it to sink in.
The now 23-year-old recalls standing up with her classmates every morning to pledge allegiance to the flag like many other American citizens. But Fatima is not a citizen. She's a dreamer, one of the hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants who came to the country as children. Right now, she's protected from deportation by the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, better known as DACA, an Obama-era executive order. But now the Trump administration wants to phase out the program. And this week, the fate of dreamers like Fatima is in the hands of 9 Supreme Court justices who will decide whether efforts to cancel the policy is constitutional.
A lot of my DACA peers are definitely anxious at the fact that, our futures are in limbo.
Co-founder of California Dreamers, Tomas Evangelista, traveled from Auburn to the nation's capital, advocating for DACA recipients like him.
A lot of us are very nervous, and that's why many of us, hundreds of us, are here right now, and 100 more will join us tomorrow to be in front of the Supreme Court.
His mother brought him to the U.S. when he was just 2 years old. Like Fatima, America is the only home he's ever known.
Northern California is home to me, and that's why I'm fighting for this.
Through DACA, Tomas and Fatima are able to work legally here in the U.S. and contribute to the local economy. But that could all change depending on the Supreme Court's ruling.
It's just frightening.
Fatima is just 2 semesters shy of graduating with a degree in child development from the California State University, Sacramento. She hopes to finish what she started and make her dream of becoming a teacher and American citizen a reality.
We're trying to make something out of our lives in order to improve our communities. We're just like everybody else.
Federal appeals courts across the country have rejected efforts to terminate the DACA program, but ultimately the Supreme Court will have the final say on the matter. A decision is expected by summer 2020. Reporting in Sacramento, Bridgette Bjorlo, Fox 40 News.